from energy availability, which is the most important, flipping that on its head.
Oh boy. And if in eating that chocolate bar, you're going to feel guilty and, like you said, hate yourself, that's not healthy.
How important is it to you to buy organic versus non-organic?
In excess? No. That I can just go click, click, click. Half an hour, food's at the door, got a fried chicken burger, some chips, delicious. You know? Like, that's not good.
I love it.
That is.
I've never had such a tangible experience with a supplement.
The anabolic window is when your muscles are most sensitive to the effects of carbohydrates and protein.
Fulfill Ironmans year after year as a pro, so you couldn't see it. So he was just eating what he wanted, and now it affected him later in life.
It still has had an effect in this particular study to your evening endurance performance. Try and keep it as simple as you can. If it's difficult and it's causing you stress, it's probably not ideal for you.
What's up,
Nice.
Jay?
What's up,
How
bro?
you doing? Welcome back to the Dice House Monday podcast.
Glad to be back, man. Glad to be back.
Oh, it's good to have you back. Unfortunately, if you're listening, we had Jay on previously, and the episode got lost due to technicalities. But luckily, we have the privilege of having him back in.
Thank you, bro.
So thank you for coming again. And
I enjoyed it last time, so I was happy to come again.
it's a pity we don't have Greg here.
Yeah.
But you and I can rock it. And I think because we've got a second opportunity, we're able to maybe channel this conversation in a more structured way and really get the message out to the listeners. Obviously, I'll let them know that you're a certified nutritionist, and that's why we brought you in. And you're an athlete, BJJ,
Yeah.
the sport.
That's my main sport.
How's that going? All good?
Yeah, I love it. I've been doing it 3.5, almost 4 years now. 3-4 times a week.
Black belt? Or?
No, nowhere near.
Are you on a
Nowhere
belt?
near, No. Yeah, color belt, blue belt, which is
Okay.
the second one up.
Nice,
This is
nice.
the first one up, really. But getting there.
That's a big stepping stone, though.
I like to think so. You know, they just, especially my gym, they don't just give those out. You know, one of my cousins is one of the coaches there, and I know he was particularly. He wanted me to make sure I was at the level to be able to hand it.
Yeah.
So shout out, John.
Nice.
So yeah, it's good fun. I love the gym, and it's a good community, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, no, it's so important to have that community in whatever sport. I'm struggling to find that community in London. There are communities, but it's just about taking the confidence of getting into them. Like,
That's it.
Yeah.
And like confidence to just talk to people, be social, and make friends, and be like, hey, do you want to train? And putting yourself out there, you know, like we did with this. Just like, hey, do you want to do this? And we done it. So
100%.
I think it goes for anything. Don't ask, don't get.
Yeah.
That's a motto I live by. My dad taught me that. Don't ask, don't get. So you might as well ask.
I love that. I want to ask, as a nutritionist, certified, we had a coffee just before coming in, yeah? You put a sugar in your
Yeah.
coffee. Tell me about that, because I'm like, no sugars.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, it's portrayed on social
Yeah.
media and in all the things that we've picked up in life that it's just an absolute no to sugar.
For me, I sugar my coffee because it tastes nicer.
I mean, that's a daily thing.
That is the daily thing. It's just one, it's a teaspoon of sugar. The issues lie with anything is when we do it in excess. That is like anything, right?
Yeah.
You can drink too much water and it be bad. So a sugar in my coffee is.
It's an interesting one because I would think a daily sugar is a lot. Is that not a lot? So is our perception maybe?
Oh yeah, perception is skewed for
Yeah.
sure. You know, even for your average person, 1 teaspoon of sugar isn't bad. That isn't, again, the issues arise when it's all done in excess. That is what the problem is. The excessiveness of whatever the vice or the thing is. It's as simple as just, I want to have my coffee with a sugar because I think it tastes better. All the coffee experts out there are probably going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you do that.
Yeah.
You're ruining the coffee. One of my best mates is like that. And I'm like, no, but I like the taste with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of sweetness in my life. You know, I don't want to start the day with, a non-sugared coffee.
100%. And I mean, you got to live.
Yeah.
And I think we'll dive into sugar a lot in this episode because when we come to the long endurance training, there's kind of a two-sided battle between the coaches and nutritionists about yes to sugar and no to sugar. But we'll get into that when we dive in. I wanted to go through the funnel of conversation just so the listeners know where we're going to be heading. And it kind of leans into my first question. So we've got a pyramid of performance fueling hierarchy.
Yeah.
And we're going to be going from energy availability, which is the most important, to macros and hydration, to food quality, to timing, to supplements
Yes.
as the least important.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off by flipping that on its head.
Oh boy.
Because you told me in our last episode how good creatine monohydrate is. And I implemented that into my life. And I've never had such a tangible experience with a supplement where I've actually felt the benefits extremely.
Yeah.
From a physical point of view, I'm feeling stronger. I can go longer. From a mental point of view, I've had like these, I'm just mentally, I'm extremely focused, happy, like euphoric almost.
Yeah.
And it can be a combination of, I've started my training block, which I love, and I'm eating super well, which we'll dive into as well. But creatine was definitely one that I picked up, and I've done it daily, and I can feel it.
Yeah.
How important is creatine monohydrate for?
Creatine is very important. It's one of the most researched supplements. I bang on about it all the time. It's one of those top 3 that I'm probably just like, I joke about it, but if we could put it in the water system, I probably would. Again, I joke about it.
I mean, I would accept.
But on that note, like you said, it's something we call the benefit of implementation. You started creatine and you looked at it as like, oh, I never felt such a tangible gain. However, you also said that you started your training block, you started eating better. So we can't just look at it as like that was the only thing. You had a combination of factors that you then started implementing it, and then you started feeling better. Is that taken away from creatine? Certainly not. You know, the benefits are found, you know, just evidence-based, one of the strongest ones, one of the ones, that's why I recommend it all the time, because the evidence is there for it works. For most sports, for endurance sports, this helps in the sprint element, you know, right at the end where you're like, I'm just going to give it the last 5 minutes, that last sprint, it works. But yeah, better strength, better recovery, better power, repeat sprintability, all of those things are going to play a role. But just like we said last time, I don't want it to take away from all the other things you did, because that is what's going to play a role towards it, as well as the creatine. But the training, you know, mentally, that's going to make you feel better because you started a block, and you know, you were just telling me how much you're enjoying it. You're in the zone. You're in that flow state now of just killing it in training. That is all going to play a part to your well-being, physical and mental.
And it's always hard because you can't pinpoint it to one specific thing, because I'll never really take creatine monohydrate and not be doing one of the other things. Do you know what I mean? They all kind of come together.
Yeah.
And that's why I ask, because supplements are on the top of that pyramid as the least important.
Again, the least important doesn't mean they're not important. It's just make sure you're covering all the other things first before you start being concerned about supplements. Because, you know, you're doing the training, you're training for triathlon, for the T100. But if you're eating like a 5-year-old child, creatine's not going to do anything for you. 4 cups of coffee is still not going to do anything for you. You know, it's going to help a little bit, but you need to be eating the right amounts, the right combination of foods to be able to fuel that performance in training and then get to competition and smash it there as well. Because, you know, performance nutrition is the strategic and intentional use of food and supplements to help recovery, to help your health, and to help performance, again, in and out the training room, whatever your training room is. Because what, when, and how much you eat is going to have an effect on readiness to train, health, performance, both in the short term and the long term. And as I always say, and health comes before performance. And your nutrition can also, especially when you're training as much as you would say in an endurance sport, but also any sport, it can have a negative effect on immune function. So if you're getting ill all the time, you're not going to be able to train. And then if you can't train, then you're not going to be able to perform. So health comes before performance, because if you're not healthy, you can't perform.
100%.
So again, supplements are important, of course. They're useful. We know they work, at least the ones that we know work. There's more and more coming out that, you know, we just need more time, more research.
I mean, I've seen negative press on creatine gummies, for example.
Oh, yeah, but that's a new controversial thing because one of the companies, they've just done someone did a third-party testing, and they're meant to contain 1 gram of creatine per gummy, and it was something like 100 milligrams. So not even a tenth of what they were claiming were in the gummies.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that's the issue with those gummies
it's
at
funny,
the moment.
Greg literally sent me an email saying, we got to start these.
Oh, no. Greg, don't do it, mate.
That's such a laugh. But that's good. So let's go from the top to the bottom. Tell me about energy availability, because it's quite a broad heading. What do you mean?
So energy availability is basically how much energy is left over after training for your body's functions. The analogy I like to give is if you look at your body like a bank account, your energy so your food is your income. Your basic physiological functions are like paying your bills, and your training is the fun money. You know, whatever that you want to classify as your fun money, whatever your definition
Surplus cash.
Yeah, surplus cash to go wherever you want, buy whatever you like, drink whatever you like. If you are spending too much money on fun money and not leaving enough for your bills, which is your basic physiological functions, you know, if I was to lay here and do nothing for a day, I'm still burning energy. You know, my body needs to digest food, my heart needs to work, all those functions that play a role to existing. That's when the problems arise, because you've not left enough energy over, because obviously you're using during training, just again, for your health. For male athletes, it's not too much. It doesn't affect you as much to have low energy availability, so not have enough, not intaking enough energy. But with female athletes, unfortunately, they're a lot more sensitive to low energy availability, and they can get menstrual dysfunction, so amenorrhea, which is complete cessation of their periods, or irregular periods, which then leads to, you know, dysfunctional hormonal profile, which then leads to bone issues. And these are all things that can happen to men as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think the female physiology is just a lot more sensitive to the effects of low energy availability. So that's what energy availability is. And the reason that's important, as I said, is so that you have enough energy, one, for training, but most importantly, just for your body to function, just to exist.
So this energy that you're pulling in, is that purely from what
food.
you're eating?
Yeah, what you eat, what you're eating, the amount you eat, but also, yes, what that food, what that energy consists of.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because each macronutrient, which we'll get to in a second, has its own function and has its own benefit when it comes to exercise and performance.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say before I forget, for the listeners, when I refer to athletes, we are all athletes. If we do a sport and we exercise, we are at all levels, a hobbyist, recreational, semi-professional, professional. That will make you an athlete.
Yeah.
So if I refer to athlete in here, we're talking about all of us who do a sport and do exercise.
Yeah. No, nice. And I wanted to sort of get the concept right of energy and food intake, because we talk about calories.
Yeah.
So calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
That's the most important metric in my head. But you also got to be careful that you can't have 4,000 calories of the wrong food, because it'll be burnt in a different way. Is that a different energy? If you eat 3,000 calories of McDonald's,
Yeah.
will you get the same energy output than you would 3,000 calories of sweet potato and all the good stuff?
So technically, yes, because 3,000 calories is 3,000 calories, but you have to also see that food isn't just energy, it's all the vitamins and minerals that come with it. There's fiber as well. There's, you know, the micronutrients. All of those things are also important, because when you train, you have a higher need for those vitamins and minerals, because you're using up more of those things. Again, we're going back to an analogy here. If you look at a car, if you drive a car every so often, you know, the car's probably going to be all right. You don't need to service it that often. You don't need to clean it that often. You don't have to look after it too much. But, you know, if you're doing long distances, you're driving it hard, you're driving it fast regularly, you probably need to keep up with the oil checks a little bit more. You know, you have to make sure you put the right amount of fuel in there. It's the same when it comes to the body. And that's why, you know, yes, in the short term, over a day, if you want to have 3,000 calories at McDonald's, sure, we'll use that example. But over the long term, we want to make sure we're giving the body, yes, the right amount of calories, because that's technically our energy availability. But food is so much more than that. It's the vitamins and minerals, the fiber, and everything else that comes alongside it to provide our bodies with what it needs.
And in terms of the calorie number, so let's look at me, for example. We're starting to burn 4,000 to 4,500 calories a day, double training. Do I need to hit that 4,500 calories in? And how much does it affect you down the week? So say I hit it for 3 days, don't hit it for 2 days. Am I going to struggle that 6th day?
Potentially.
Training. Can you look at it as a week block?
I think sometimes it's easier to look at it as a week block, because, you know, the average over the week is 4,500 times 5. You know, sometimes you're not burning as much, but recovery is still taking part on those days you're not training. You know, you're still recovering on those days.
Well, I'm hungrier on those days.
Yeah.
I'm hungrier on the recovery day.
And that's because also the hungrier might also be just because usually when you're running, you know, the blood is going to other places, that be the muscles. So the digestion is almost like, you're like, nah, we need to send the blood flow to these areas of the body, because that's what we're using. But on those rest days, you're still recovering. So should you eat a little bit less? Sure. because, again, especially if you're watching your body comp, you want to make sure you're not going up in weight. But overall, are you hitting the 4,500 calories on the days you're training?
It's hard.
It's hot. Oh, yeah. It's certainly very hard to eat that much
Yeah.
food without just blasting crap food.
Or I mean, that's where the sort of gels and the carb drinks come into play.
Yeah,
especially when you're in
and
the
that's
training.
again, those are like sports foods that we want to use, because otherwise you're going to be eating sweet potato, and
Yeah,
that's not
exactly.
ideal.
Yeah.
Sweet potato is a great food, I might add. But when you're trying to eat 4,000, 4,500, 5,000, even higher for some of the bigger, longer athletes in
Yeah.
terms of like longer training, that's a tough gig to be eating that much. So this is again where the processed foods and people look like, oh, and this is again the sugar argument. That's where we do need to use those things, because otherwise you're going to have a real hard time eating that much.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer you to eat that, 80% sure whole foods.
I was going to
the
go
extra
ask you for a
20%.
number. So
Yeah.
80-20.
80-20. Let's go with that, because again, we're making sure we're getting all the healthy stuff, all the micronutrients from all the whole foods, but also we're using that 20% to hit those energy needs. Because like I said to you, the low energy availability, you won't be recovering as well, your training won't feel as good. Immune function could go down if you're not eating enough, because you're not having enough food to fuel the training, but most importantly, just your body's basic functions.
Yeah.
So that's why it's 80-20, using those foods, the processed foods that are demonized in social media and everywhere else, to be able to fuel yourself and recover and train.
Yeah. So let's take it up a block to the macronutrients.
Yeah.
How important is it? Because I don't track it, for example.
Yeah.
And I don't think your average guy or woman does. Should we?
There's different forms of tracking. They might be, numerical, using any app.
Yeah.
And clicking and
ChatGPT.
scanning. Yeah, that's another new one.
Yeah.
Scanning, sure. But you can also look at it as, I personally like, this is not an original concept by me, it's something we call performance plates. So it's a visual guide to how to look at your plate based on if you're training, how much you're training, and the proportion of
I've seen that.
different
Yeah.
macronutrients, so carbohydrates, protein, fats, in addition, to visualize that tracking. Carbohydrates are our main source of fuel during moderate and intense exercise. If we can increase that carbohydrate, still have a good amount of protein, because that's our recovery, still have some fats within there, because that's like our health food, as what I like to call it, and we adjust the only thing we adjust is the carbohydrate intake. On a super hard training day, you're going to increase that amount. If you want to track and be a bit more methodical, you can, sure. It can be from anywhere from 3 to 12 grams per kilo. Once you get into that higher number, it is a lot of carbohydrates. That's like, it could be 500, 600, 700 grams of carbs. Going back to it, it's tough to get that amount in. If you're eating that in just potatoes, you're going to have a hard time. It's, again, the jokes we made last time.
Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time. So do I think you need to track? Not necessarily the standard way of MyFitnessPal or any of the other apps. But I do think it's important to take note of, okay, I've got a long training session. I'm going to eat a little bit more carbohydrates just to see how you feel. Because I think also it's judging it by how you feel. And the type of carbohydrate. Oh, I tried rice, that didn't sit with my stomach. Oh, I tried pasta, that made me feel a lot better. Let's run with that. And then you can just run with those foods in all different formats, all different recipes, whatever it is you want to do.
I like that 80-20 that you mentioned, because you're someone that's in the know, and you just seem a lot more comfortable with having something that's not macronutrient or whatever it is. And I think one of the biggest things at the moment with social media and everything is everyone's becoming like, you can't have any of it.
Yeah.
And it's this fixation with you have to be as healthy as possible. But people in the know, seem to just be more relaxed.
I'm just more relaxed because it's again, health is all different, is a different number of things. There's physical health, mental health, emotional health, intellectual health, social health. If I'm eating a food that I think is healthy, whatever you want to call it, let's call spinach healthy, sure. But I'm not eating these other foods because they're inherently bad for me and they're going to make me feel guilty. Is that healthy?
Well, that's my point. The stress.
Yeah.
Are we putting ourselves under too much stress?
Yeah, sure. 100%. Do we have to be perfect? No,
Yeah.
like, that's not what life's about. You know, we
yeah.
have to enjoy it. The sugar in my coffee. I don't want a bitter coffee.
But what's the effect? Because I will eat a chocolate and then hate myself for an hour. That's
The
probably a
effect,
worse effect on the body and the mind.
there you go. Instead of just looking at it like, it's a chocolate bar. You know, one sunny day doesn't make a summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we hardly get any of those.
Yeah, but, yeah. I mean, we kind of get in there, but that's it. That one chocolate bar is not
Yeah.
gonna make a difference, you know. And if you're
100%.
training hard and you need to get those extra 200, 300 calories, and if that's gonna help you meet that number, then you're gonna be better. And if in eating that chocolate bar, you're gonna feel guilty and, like you said, hate yourself. That's not healthy. Like, you know, that's the reality of it. You know, I'm someone that I always share the food I have on social media. I love a burger, my favorite food. I'll eat out at least once a week. You know, either with my missus, we'll go out to to a nice restaurant, or we'll get a takeaway on a Friday evening. Do you know why? Because I don't want to cook on a Friday. And I'm gonna have a good time because it's tasty. Thankfully, we have that kind of food available to us. Is it amazing? Again, in excess? No. That I can just go click, click, click. Half an hour, food's at the door. Got a fried chicken burger, some chips, delicious. You know, like that's not good.
I love it.
That is, again, that availability isn't amazing. That's
Yeah.
part of the problem we have in society.
Yeah.
But
Use it.
I'm relaxed. I train hard.
Yeah.
You know, I cycle everywhere. Thankfully, I have that option. You know, I train jiu-jitsu 3 times a week. I lift once a week. I run once a week. That is just what I enjoy doing. And again, I need to fuel my body and give the body it needs. You know, am I overweight? Am I obese? I like to think not. Could I be more lean and more shredded? Sure. But the sacrifices I would need to make in order to achieve that, sometimes I don't want to do. You know, I've got a holiday coming up. Do I want to be a little bit more leaner for my own vanity? Sure. And for my own confidence? Sure. I'm okay with that. And I accept that there is that vanity element. But does anyone else care? I don't think so. You know, I've got misses. I don't really need to impress anyone else.
That's a really important message.
But it is for myself. And I don't like, can I swear?
Yeah.
I don't like bullshitting people and being like, oh, it's not, you know, I don't want to be lean. No, everyone feels a little bit more confident when they've lost a little bit weight, 100%. You know, got a little bicep vein going. Everyone feels more confident. But don't let that affect your mental health in achieving that, because some people can get so lean so easily and some people just can't.
Can go too far.
And it's just harder, you know. I know for me, you know, I usually sit around 92, 93 kilos. In June, I got to like 89, 90. I was like, oh, I feel good, you know. Like, I feel like I'm in shape.
You definitely feel better.
Yeah,
whatever
you
it
feel
is about
better,
it. But
for sure.
Yeah.
But don't do it at the sacrifice of your mental health.
Yeah. And people do it because of how much they see these people with six packs and stuff on social media. It's this like facade that they want to be like that person.
And for those people, there's a financial incentive to look that way. You know, to keep their 6-pack, 8-pack, you know, male or female, you know, they've got their Gymshark sponsorship that they need to keep. And by doing that, they need the followers and they need the engagement, because otherwise they're going to be like, sorry, you know, you're not getting the necessary views. So you need to stay in shape.
I actually had that exact chat with another podcast, the Mindset podcast. We're going to link up and do something in the future, but it was that exact thing. He was telling me about how much pressure they're under because Gymshark can just pull the carpet from the rug.
Yeah. And obviously I don't want to just use that particular company. I'm sure all the other companies do so. But that's why it's so hot. So
social media contracts.
Yeah, it's important not to compare yourself to these people because, you know, I share this message. I try to share this message a lot on social media. We have different lifestyles. We have different work. You know, this conversation we were just having. 9 to 5 is different. We need to bear that in mind. And I think this is you know, we've kind of gone off tangent here, but it's an important message to have.
No, that was a really important message. But in moderation is the key, because I watch a triathlete who I look up to. How am I forgetting his name now? Lionel Sanders.
Okay.
And he's now just pre-diabetic, and he's a pro triathlete, ripped. Like, he's won races, Ironmans, the whole thing, but he had a poor diet. And now he's done full bloods and everything, and he's like just before that barrier of being a diabetic.
Okay.
So that was obviously an excess. You know, but you couldn't see it because he was putting in
Shredded.
6,000 calorie days, training for full Ironmans year after year as a pro. So you couldn't see it. So he was just eating what he wanted. Yeah. And now it affected him later in life. And he's changed his diet now, says he feels incredible. Pre that, he hated his life. He was waking up 8 times a night to pee. 8 times. That's hardly sleeping. Pro triathlete, this guy.
And see, and also sleep is a supplement in itself.
Yeah.
You know, a quick fact on that. people who sleep less than 7 hours in a night have a 1.7 times higher risk of injury.
Yeah.
So even just not sleeping is gonna affect that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, but now he's only peeing once.
There you
All
go.
he did was change his diet.
And that's why it's so important. Honestly, that is why it's so important. Not just in your training, but the quality of your life outside of training. You know, whether it be physical, yes, feeling better, recovering better, or mentally having those things and not feeling guilty and not hating yourself. There's conversations I've had recently with some clients, that they've like, oh, you know, I go out to eat and I have a couple of drinks and I just feel super guilty. I'm like, yeah, but you're out with your colleagues. You're having a social life. If it means having a couple of beers, sure. If you're having a couple of beers every night, there's an issue.
How bad is alcohol?
Oh, it's not amazing. It's definitely one of the ones that there's not too much of a positive out the other side. You know, it affects your sleep, affects your recovery, you know, makes people not very nice, in excess again.
Yeah.
But yeah, alcohol is one of those ones that there's not too much of a benefit. You know, there's the arguments of red wine and its polyphenols, antioxidant properties, but no,
Kills your sleep.
Keep it to a minimum.
Yeah.
As little as you can.
Well,
for the fun times, sure. Again, every now and again, having a couple drinks with your friends. There's a party, there's a birthday party, an engagement, whatever it is. Yeah, enjoy yourself. You know, if that's what you want to do. If you don't like drinking, don't. It's really that simple.
It's a culture thing because we've been brought up at drinking.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
our generation.
You were in England. It's a big drinking culture.
But also my parents pack home braais. Like we were just, all my friends in that generation, it was Stellenbosch University. It was how much you could drink. That was
There's a competition.
That was it.
Yeah.
Now, the Gen Zs, there's this whole movement of how little they drink. And I think it's because of all the knowledge that we have now to what we didn't have.
Yeah.
Same with smoking. Back in the day, the guys used to smoke. Planes, whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't have the knowledge. Now they see all the lung cancer, smoking.
And it's expensive now. £7 for a pint in London is.
Yeah,
you know, you check your bank account the next day and you're like, I spent how much on alcohol?
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation last night.
Yeah.
I'm like, that hurts me,
Yeah.
and I'd rather not. I spend it on other nice things, like a nice meal out. You know, with my friends, with my missus. Like, that's
100%.
that's what I'd rather do
than
drink alcohol. Yeah, sure, I have a pint at dinner, but again, that's not the sole focus.
Okay, let's go back to the pyramid. Food quality is next.
Yeah, so again, going back to that, within each macronutrient, carbohydrates, protein, fat, we want to make sure we're getting the best quality food, because, you know, carbohydrates, it's not just the fuel element of it. There's carbohydrates are also fruit and veg. So the fiber we get from that, to have a healthier gut microbiome, have a healthier gut system, the vitamins and minerals we get from those foods. The protein, again, protein quality, so that we're getting the necessary amino acids, which is basically the building blocks of proteins, to be able to recover effectively. From fats at the moment, I think the main issue is that we lack variety. Too many people have the saturated fat, so it's like the meats, the cheese, the butters, which isn't inherently unhealthy in itself, but it's the lack of variety and not having the polyunsaturated fats, which is, you know, nuts, seeds, avocados, olive oil.
Those are the mojos.
There's
Mojo givers.
Yeah, that's the mojo givers. Shout out, Greg. It's the imbalance between those two. So it's getting the food quality, because they come, again, food is not just energy, it's all of the other things we have that come with it. Because, you know, protein is not only involved in muscle recovery, it's enzymes, immune function, aid in injury healing, you know, wound healing. All of those things are going to play a role. With fats is our fat soluble vitamins. We need those. We need fats within our diet to be able to absorb them. You know, sex hormones also made from fat. You know, even vitamin D, we make it from a cholesterol in our diet through sunlight. We get sunlight onto our skin, and then there's a process in our body that uses cholesterol, which we get from fat, to create vitamin D. So that is what I mean by having good food quality. Going back to the 80-20 thing, that's why you want that 80% of good food quality, because food's not just energy.
Is that why keto is quite popular, because it just fills you with all those fats? Is that one of the positives?
I think keto is popular because it's easy, in the sense of, you know, you can't have rice, pasta, bread, potatoes. That's all you need to think about. Just don't have those things. Whilst also it tends to increase your protein intake, which then is more satiating, so it keeps you fuller for longer. Fats do slow down digestion, so you do feel fuller for longer. But, you know, from a body composition perspective or a weight loss, fat loss perspective, I prefer to call it, when we calorie match all the different diets that we hear of, they all work the same because they all work on a calorie deficit. But it's what suits you and your lifestyle. Okay. That's the main winner. How long can you stay consistent on it for? How long can you adhere to it? And the level you can adhere to it. But when we talk about keto diets for athletes, not amazing. You know, because...
And fasting, not amazing.
Fasting, not amazing,
but
for
fasting
sure.
for the normal person is nice because, like you say, it's easy.
Exactly. And it's, again, going back to the easiness, and it's easy to follow. Oh, I don't have to eat till 12 or 1 o'clock. And then I just eat my normal 2-3 meals.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. That you just don't eat. But for your average person like yourself, who might burn 4,500 calories, fasting is definitely not going to be good, because then you start at 1 o'clock and then you have to eat 4,500 calories within that 8-hour period instead of the 16-hour period. Yeah, not ideal.
No, I actually was fasting for about a year and a half, and I did like it from a weight loss perspective, and I did have a bit of mental clarity in all they talk about, but when I got into this type of training, it was just never going to happen.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
But I have a big question, because this is an argument I have with the missus. How important is it to you to buy organic versus non-organic?
There's not much of a difference.
Not important.
I don't think it's important. You know, they've done the studies, they've done the research. I don't think it's that important.
Because some of the big social media guys like Andrew Huberman and stuff say it's vital.
I guess the nutrient profile might be slightly better, but I don't think it's that important. You know, we also have to take the financial
that's where the argument comes from.
Into it. You know, if you want to and you can afford to, sure, go for it. But I don't think the gain is tangible enough to make a difference. Some people may disagree with me, but I just haven't seen enough evidence to support whatever claims that they seem to be making on the difference.
Yeah, there's two things there for me, because like you said, the cost. So I've actually just been specific. So I go for organic eggs. Okay. I just think I've heard through the channels that they're more nutritious. So
that's one that make the eggs, the chickens even tend to have a better life.
Yeah.
So they're, you know, free range, fed slightly better food. So again, the nutrient profile might be a little bit better.
Is it tangible enough?
Is it tangible enough? I'm not sure.
Okay.
So my argument would be that I don't think it's that important, but if you want to and you can afford to, go for it. You know, it's not going to be a negative.
Yeah. Because one thing I do see, for example, if you put a cucumber next to an organic cucumber, they're different sizes.
Yeah.
The non-organic is huge.
Yeah.
Like they've pumped it with steroids and it's come out like big
protein
and fresh.
Shakes,
yeah.
Cucumber. Yeah. And
the kiwis, this big and then this big, organic.
Yeah, that's it. It's going back to the food availability. We are spoiled just that we can go to a supermarket and get a variety of foods that are in season or not in season, and just foods that, if we live in England, you may never ever experience. So I guess use that privilege, you know, to get those foods if you want them. But going back to the organic, non-organic, I don't think it's that important. Unless you really want to.
No, that's interesting. And I'm going to take this opportunity on food quality to talk about what I changed in my diet. And we were speaking about how I'm feeling just on a different level, you know, waking up euphoric mentally, physically. I'm moving on a different page. And one of the things I also implemented was the morning smoothie. And this consists of beetroot, celery, spinach, ginger, lemon, kiwi, banana, water.
It's a lot. In a good way.
But it comes out like small. It's like a juice almost. It's not a smoothie.
Yeah.
It goes blended. I put a lot of water and it's just like a small whiskey glass hit.
So let's break that down, right? It's going back to the argument of all the things you did.
Yes.
Is by having that thing, 1, you're hydrating more in the morning. 2, you have better nutrient profile, because all of these foods are great for you.
Yeah.
They contain all of these vitamins and minerals. Boom. So you had a boost in that. There's also the slight energy boost that, you know, you're going to get from that. It might be only an extra 300 calories. I don't know. I'm just plucking that number out of the air. But it's that combination of 3 things that is improving how you feel. You can't just put it down to, I'm having that ginger and that ginger is making me feel better. It's you're hydrating more. There's slightly more energy. There's a better vitamin and mineral profile. that you may not have been having before. You might have woken up and just had a coffee, boom, gone to work.
Exactly.
And that is the difference in itself. We can, we were just talking when we were having our coffee. Don't look at that one thing you did. What is all the other things you also done as a result of you implementing, like you said, the creatine, but then it was also the training, but it's also the better food, which is
just
the
compounds.
It all compounds.
Yeah.
But people like to talk in these absolutes of, it was that kiwi. It was definitely that kiwi.
But they love kiwis.
Yeah,
they talk about the microbiome.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw a piece of research recently that 2 kiwis, like an hour or two before bed, helps with sleep latency, so how quick you fall asleep, and sleep quality. So I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly what it is within a kiwi.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some foods that have better benefits for other things because, again, it's just going back to the nutrient profile. What nutrients do they contain a little bit more of? Oh, were you having that before?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So in having it, you've improved the quality of your diet as a result, but also the energy intake, but also the hydration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not looking at the one thing you've done.
Yeah.
Look at it as a combination of factors. What am I doing by implementing this thing? But I want to touch on hydration just because I know we had that kind of structure that we wanted to follow. Because hydration is so important.
Yeah.
2% dehydration of fluid loss in the body can lead to a detrimental effect to your cognitive function and aerobic performance. 2% is not a lot of body weight. It's for someone who's 100 kilos, 2 kilos worth of weight. So someone who's about 75 kilos, 1.5 kilos of fluid.
Is that what you hold?
No, it's what you sweat out.
Oh, right.
And when you exercise, you can lose something like 3 to 5%. Depending on the length, depending on conditions. You're from South Africa, maybe you're training out there and it's warm and you're sweating buckets. Just sweating 1 kilo, 1.5 kilos can have effect on your performance. And that's why it's so important to be hydrated. How do we do it? Honestly, the best way, because everyone sweats so differently and there's such variability within sweat rates, and men tend to sweat more than women just because of their way that women thermoregulate is slightly different. Men just sweat more.
Right.
We need to make sure that we stay on top of that to be able to perform. Like, again, it's the compound of factors that are going to play a role in how we feel. Sometimes you're dehydrated, you have a drink, you're like, oh, that was what was wrong. That was what the issue was.
And yeah, this is the interesting point, because when I spoke about sugar in the beginning, some people promote a Powerade and some people have the Revive with no carbs or calories, and it's just purely electrolytes. So would you be more of a fan of in that moment? So my dad just did the Epic. He didn't manage to get past stage 3 because it was 45 degrees in Paarl. 7-hour cycle.
Damn.
2,700 meters up. And he had to pull out before water point 2 because he was just dehydrated. He was done.
Yeah.
He was done.
And it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up. 45 degrees,
45,
that much
it
elevation.
got up to 50. They cancelled the stage.
Yeah, see, there you go. So that is going to play a role. You've lost a kilo or 2.
And he sweats like we sweaters as people.
So that in itself is going to play a role. How do you track it? Honestly, the best way is just looking at your pee color. You don't want it to be completely transparent. You want it to be like a pale yellow. Otherwise, you're slightly overhydrated when you're transparent. That's usually when you've gone to the toilet 3-4 times in the last hour. The darker it is, the more dehydrated you are. That is honestly the best way to track it. Again, just because everyone varies so much in terms of sweat rates and everything else within that.
Yeah, his normal weight is about 82, 83. That day it was 75.
Yeah.
Not all in one day, but like the 4 months of training up to it and the race day.
Okay.
Yeah,
but also that's another way you can track how hydrated you are. Weigh yourself before a session.
Yeah.
Track how much you drink, because obviously as you drink 500 mils of water, that's going to add 500 grams. And then take that number at the end, see what the difference is. And you go, oh crap, yeah, I'm 1 kilo down. That means I need to rehydrate that much because I've just lost that in sweat. We're getting to the summer months here in England. It's not that hot yet. But as we get on, it's where hydration is a little bit important. You said your Ironman's going to be in Italy in September. It's probably going to be pretty hot. So start considering your hydration strategy so that you can stay on top of it. Don't leave it until it's too late. Because if you leave it until it's too late, it's going to be hard to catch up.
Yeah.
Because yes, you're rehydrating, but you're also still sweating.
We got taught a lesson at ZLMZ. Because it was 27 degrees and the race started at 11. So we were in the sun on the hill on the bike at 12 o'clock. 27 time. There were people chundering next to me. And this is where the fear comes in terms of mentally. I was running and I was dying. My heart rate had run too high the whole race. This woman just fell into the bush in front of me. She just
Gone.
collapsed. Yeah. So do you think that probably wasn't nutrition pushing too hard?
Partly.
Dehydrated.
Yeah, again, it can be many factors, but definitely heat exhaustion is a real thing.
Yeah.
With, 12 o'clock sun, everyone knows it's not the most ideal one to be out,
Yeah.
especially by doing an intense competition, endurance race, especially. And again, endurance, especially because you're out there for so long. 10K an hour, you're fine. I've done 10Ks and not had anything, like no water. Yeah, you finish and you're definitely dehydrated.
Yeah, but you're fine.
For those 2, 3, 4 hour events, plus, for sure, you need to stay on top of it. Because as soon as that deficit starts in terms of your hydration, that's when things start to go wrong.
I want you to touch on something that we spoke about last time in terms of hydration. You spoke about the ranking of what is the best to put through your system post-race, or if you're in a dehydrated state.
Yeah, so there's actually something called the Beverage Hydration Index, which ranks the quality of hydration of each fluid. That's probably not the right way to word it. But funnily enough, water sits at number 8.
Yeah, crazy.
Which is crazy. I think number 1 is an oral rehydration solution. So that tends to be like those, like Diorolite, which are specifically made for rehydrating you. Then it's skimmed.
Is that electrolytes?
Yeah, I think it's a style of electrolytes.
Okay.
There's more
sodium.
Yeah, sodium is an electrolyte.
Right.
But then the one that falls below that is skimmed milk.
Yeah.
Then it's whole milk.
Is that why people love Steri Stumpies?
What's Steri Stumpies?
It's like a milkshake. It's like a
post-workout
milk. Yeah.
Yeah, so what you said
it's a
there...
flavored milk.
Yeah, so what you said there, what you said previously about when people drink a Gatorade or a sugar-free one, we actually do want some carbohydrates within that hydration solution because that helps hydrate you. Because the other reason is we store 3 grams of water per gram of carbohydrate. So if you're also depleted with carbohydrates, you won't have the storage capacity almost to hold on to even more water. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which is why, again, sorry, going back to your original thing about the flavored milk is carbohydrates and fluid. And actually, chocolate milk, I believe, is one of the best ones post-recovery to help refuel and recover, both from a hydration perspective and from a carbohydrate perspective, which is probably why people do like it,
Yeah, I had a pro triathlete on the pod, and she's also a certified nutritionist.
Yeah.
Mariella Sawyer, and she posts her milk Steri Stumpy every time post a training session.
And that is why chocolate milk is, again, it comes up a lot in the research, and I'm sure it's one of those ones that you're like, yeah, have a chocolate milk. But then again, people might look at it and be like, oh my God, you can't be having chocolate milk. What's that about?
Yeah.
Again, it's very different and it's very sports specific. You're training hard. You need to make sure you're doing that stuff right.
And it's something I haven't tried and I'm going to, because there are some moments when I come back after a big session and I feel dizzy.
Yeah.
Is that the moment?
But potentially, you've also just had a hard run. Yes, dehydration, slight depletion. Is it normal? Should you feel like that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know what you've done before that. So this is where, again, in that hierarchy, that the one just under supplements is timing. Why is timing important? For your average person, do I think it's important to start eating food immediately after your exercise?
A good segue, this timing. Yeah.
See what I did there? Where do I think it's that important for your average, gym goer who's just lifting a few weights, not too intense? No. But for someone like yourself, where you said you had double training days, you do want to start that refueling process as soon as possible, because it's in that, you heard the anabolic window. Again, for the average so the anabolic window, the anabolic window is when your muscles are most sensitive to the effects of carbohydrates and protein.
Okay.
Carbohydrates in that replenishing of glycogen. Glycogen is just a stored form of carbohydrate, and the recovery process from having protein. It's that anabolic window. It's basically, they say that like the first 45 minutes post-session. For your average person, do I think you need to worry about that? No, as long as you're having a total daily, good, especially protein, total daily amount appropriate to your goals. But for you, double training days, you do want to start that refueling process as soon as possible, because that is when your muscles are most sensitive to the food and the energy you're feeding it, so that you're recovered sufficiently enough to hit that, you've just done a morning session, to hit that evening session. because it takes time for your body to absorb it and it to get into your system. So for the average person, timing is not that important. But for this particular instance and this situation, it does become important, especially for the double training days. But also, they've, there was a study title, Omission of a Carbohydrate-Rich Breakfast. So not having a carbohydrate-rich breakfast affects evening endurance performance. So going back to the fasting thing, even if it's, and that's also calorie equated. So even if you have a big enough lunch to match with, if you had a breakfast and a lunch, it still has had an effect in this particular study to your evening endurance performance. So which is why you can't just look at your pre-training meal an hour or two before.
It's the whole day.
It's the whole day, which is going to play a part to how you feel, to how you perform.
Yeah.
And everyone's done it. You've been short for time, haven't had enough time to eat the food, and you turn up to a training session, whatever sport it is, you're like, wow, this feels a lot harder than it usually does.
Yeah.
Like for me, sometimes I turn up to jiu-jitsu, I'm fighting other humans. I'm like, oh boy, this is not a good day. And you finish and you're like flat on the floor, and you might finish a run or a cycle or a hard swim. You're like,
100%.
That felt way harder.
I focus on it in a big way. I put it out the night before. The piece of bread, the banana. And even my partner, Lauren, says when she has a banana versus when she doesn't have a banana, just the banana.
Yeah.
She feels incredibly different.
And that's it. Start small. Some people, especially like say it's an early morning session. I was having a conversation with a client just the other day. If you're like, I just can't stomach food in the morning.
They're scared to eat the big sandwich.
Yeah, but don't eat the big sandwich yet. If you're not used to having it, you can train the gut. That's a real thing. You can get your gut is almost like a muscle that you get it used to eating the foods. I had a client, she didn't like eating breakfast at all. But it got to the afternoon, evening, and she was just tired.
Exhausted,
She had the cravings, for sweet stuff. Your body is very smart. I put this comment on somewhere on social media. Your body is very smart. If you're not giving it the energy it needs, it knows what foods it needs to make you crave to get the energy it wants.
So then you start craving the bad things.
So, I guess bad things, because they are energy dense, they're hyper palatable. Like you said, a chocolate bar. You see a chocolate bar when you're really hungry. That's why I don't go to the supermarket when I'm hungry. You make bad decisions when you're hungry.
Or let me tell you, when you're in the office 9 to 5, you're just sitting at your desk and you're slightly a little bit bored, and the kitchen is filled with chocolates because it's someone's birthday every day. So there's cakes and there's chocolates and there's muffins. It is excruciatingly difficult.
Because your body knows to drive you to have those things because you're not getting the energy you need. So it's like, hey, that food over there, I know you've seen it. Go get it.
And it's so true. But I want to ask you something. I'm glad this has come up because I quit chocolate for a month.
Yeah.
It was easy not to have those sweets in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Easy. Didn't even cross my mind. Started again, had one chocolate on a Sunday, gone back to being extremely hard. What is that? Why I ask is because there was a clear mindset that it was easy to not eat the chocolate.
Yeah.
It was, I didn't need it.
That was it.
But after every meal now, when I'm back on it, I want that chocky bar.
I think it's the intention that you set. Having that intention and the goal makes it
easier,
tangible, and easier because you've set yourself that goal.
So there's nothing happening in the body or the mind?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I personally don't think so.
Okay.
Because I think it's just the intention. If you set the intention of, I'm going to go run once a week, every week for the year, it's much easier than not setting that intention. That's why New Year's resolutions tend to sometimes be quite useful. Like for me, myself, for the last 3-4 years, I do like a mind map of goals, training, business, all these different things. And I keep them there and I put it somewhere I'm going to see it because I'm going to open that drawer where it's sat and I'm like, oh crap, I was meant to do that. I'm running once a week. That's why I've started running. My goal is run on average once a week. The reason I say on average is because that allows me, if I'm busy one weekend or I can't do one week, as long as I get 52 runs in the year, I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's the intention behind it. I've set the goal. It's much easier for me to, no, I have a goal. I'm not going to do that thing. So I don't think there's anything within the body like physiological.
No, but it is interesting.
I might be wrong.
That sounds like it's right because it was just a mental thing that I was off chocolate. So I just didn't think about it because I have a slight addiction.
Yeah.
Jay, funny, my other co-host in Cape Town is also Jay. and his addiction was worse. So we were together, when we lived together, it was bad. Like, we can put down 3 slabs, no problem.
Yeah.
But the problem is with the training is you don't feel it as much as you do when you're not training, because it's just burning.
Yeah.
So like when I have a chocolate now, I don't even feel it.
Yeah.
So it's bad.
That's a good thing. But again, is it a good thing? Maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's helping you meet those energy needs.
Yeah.
I think people tend to complicate it all. And I think that's one of the messages I want to send, to try and keep it as simple as you can. If it's difficult and it's causing you stress, it's probably not ideal for you. Find a strategy. There's no perfect methods, just perfect principles. As long as you remember the fundamentals. I know we haven't really touched on everything we wanted to touch on today so far, but if you can cover the fundamentals, how you apply those fundamentals doesn't matter. The destination is the same. How you get there doesn't matter.
Yeah. And the one big thing that I changed mentally was ignoring the aesthetics and trying to lose weight. So I'm just eating so much more comfortably, and I have been training on a different level. Like before, I remember when we spoke, I was getting those sugar depletions. So I'd go on a run and literally feel like I'd had to sit down because I just wasn't getting enough energy availability. And I've definitely done a lot better because I haven't focused on losing weight. I've just focused on eating and being relaxed, like you say, eating those chocolates every now and again, because I know that I'm putting out these huge outputs, and it's been a game changer.
I'm glad you made those changes since we spoke, because that is what it's about, really. And in not focusing on the aesthetics and fueling your training properly, the aesthetics might have got better because you're training harder, recovering better, not feeling as crap as you might have. So again, it's all a lovely combination to improve everything. And the aesthetics might come with it. They might not, but that's not the focus anyway. The focus is to perform better and get better times and hit those PBs and
change the focus
and turn up and continue to turn up and be able to continue to turn up.
Yeah, no, it's important. Okay, final tier. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on in timing?
No, I think that's it. Just to leave us enough time to talk about that other stuff.
Supplements.
Supplements, everyone's favorite subject.
Tell me.
Creatine, one of the best. There's health and performance supplements. Health, obviously, are just going to benefit us with our health, and performance are what's going to help us in our sport or in exercise.
And I just want to touch on why I talk about creatine like that, because I have the whey protein, I have the electrolytes, if that's a supplement, vitamin D, the salmon one,
fish oils,
oils, omega-3. I've never felt, like I said, the tangible effect with any other supplement I've had before, except for like pre-workout.
Yeah,
you have pre-workout and you just
you're flying.
But creatine, like, it's really made a big difference.
Yeah.
So how important is the supplement for the athlete, but also for the everyday human?
The everyday human who trains is always going to help. Again, they're called supplements because they're meant to help supplement your diet. Especially the ones that work and are evidence-based. They are evidence-based because they work. And if we want to get that 1% better, we want to perform a little bit quicker, like we all do. We all want to be, hopefully, we want to be slightly better. We want to compete. We want to train harder. We want to, go a little bit faster than our peers, because there's always that competitive element in the back of your head.
Absolutely.
Not in like a negative way. I think it's important to have a bit of healthy competition. It's like what I told you about my mate when he was like, "Oh, you're not going to be my 10K time," and I'm like, "Oh, watch this space." Went out and beat it. So. It is important, but make sure you're covering all those other things we've discussed earlier.
Fundamentals.
The fundamentals, exactly. Then you can apply these supplements to
enhance.
To enhance. Thank you. That's exactly the word. To enhance the rest of your training. To enhance the rest of your nutrition. Creatine, 3 to 5 grams per day. Like I said, I already said the benefits earlier. These are the performance ones. What are the other ones? We've got sodium bicarb. This is more for like endurance. Be careful with sodium bicarb. It's literally baking soda.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Someone sent me a podcast on some guy that just eats that straight before he goes.
You just got to be careful though, because gut issues are a real thing, meaning you can end up in the toilet and not having a really good time. So I believe it's 0.2 to 0.4 grams per kilo of body weight. Start off on the lower end. Before I forget, try all supplements or a new supplement in training before you try it in competition, before you shit yourself, especially with sodium bicarb.
Does it give a big effect?
So it's a buffer So, when you're training, you create acidity in the blood, and it's that acidity which stops the energy metabolism process. This helps to reduce the acidity. So it does work. It's probably the best way to explain it without getting too crazy.
I'm disappointed I didn't listen to that podcast. I've been telling him I would, just to have a bit more information. But this guy basically did a crazy ultra marathon.
Yeah.
With the use of bicarb.
Yeah.
So and like broke the record or something.
Yeah, so that's one that works. Beta alanine is another really good one. That's 3 to 6 grams per day, usually over a more chronic period. So taking it over 6 weeks is when you're going to get the benefits. That's another similar one. Whereas the sodium bicarb can just be like a one-time thing. You don't have to take it over a long period of time.
Would you suggest that to someone like me?
I'd say give it a go. See how you feel. Especially, I would say for those maybe shorter training sessions where you need to push the pace a little bit more and you have to like feel the burn. Give it a go, but please start off low with the dosage, because that is one of the ones that's known for
going straight
having shitty results. Like I remember I presented at a rowing club and I was talking about sodium bicarb, and the coach was like, "Oh, I can't remember the guy's name, one of the rowers." He was like, "Oh, Rory, you know about that, don't you?" And then the whole room of like 70, 80 people started laughing. And I was like, yep, we all know then. We've all experienced someone who's done it, because it just unfortunately is one of those that can give you some bad gut issues.
That's interesting.
Beta alanine, I'm forgetting. Electrolytes are good for the more endurance sports for a longer period of time. I think within, any training that's an hour and a half and below, you don't have to worry about electrolytes, because you should be getting that from your diet. But again, endurance sports, 2, 3, 4 hours, then start to consider that, especially when it's really sweaty, especially when it's really hot. What else is there on there? There's a new one which I've been looking at the research called HMB. I'm going to butcher the name. It's a super massive name. Beta hydroxy methylbutyrate.
Oh, that sounded good.
I don't know if it's correct. It's something along those lines. So it's like a muscle building supplement. It is a metabolite of leucine. Leucine is basically one of our essential amino acids. Don't want to go too scientific today. And this is one that I've actually just recently kind of discovered. And it's meant to reduce muscle protein breakdown and slightly increase muscle protein synthesis.
Okay.
I'm going to leave it as that. I won't go into it. Do your own research for that one. Yeah. It's still quite new to me, so I don't want to talk too much on that. Caffeine, everyone knows caffeine. That's 3 to 6 milligrams per kilo. Your average cup of coffee like at home is something like 100 milligrams. You want about, depending on the person, 3 to 400 milligrams.
Is that including the caffeine that I'll have in my gels?
No. So yes, including that. So again, for endurance sport, having the gels with caffeine is great, because it gives you that little boost, especially those 2, 3, 4 hour sessions again, where you need that boost. But, each coffee, even the coffee shop coffee, have a little bit more. Sometimes they have like 150, 200 milligrams. And so it's just making sure you have the right dosage, because, one cup of coffee isn't necessarily enough for an ergogenic dose, so to enhance your performance. So that's caffeine. Most people know about that one. Very good. Also one of the most researched supplements. It does work for so many things. Even just I think the most beneficial one is to reduce the rate of perceived exertion. So it makes hard exercise feel that little bit less harder.
Right.
Then the health supplements, vitamin D.
Especially
here. Yeah. I just really, from our last pod, just yesterday, I posted a video about seasonal depression.
Yeah.
It happens. The dosage, anywhere between 1,000 and 4,000 IU. Just look on the label of your thing. Usually it's best to consult your doctor. But again, I've had clients who are like, I just feel kind of tired. I'm like, you should get your vitamin D levels checked. And there's one, it's particularly in my head. She went, got her levels tested. It was vitamin D. And I was like, I'm a genius. So vitamin D is great. Omega-3s, another one. Essential fatty acids help muscle protein synthesis, helps recovery, anti-inflammatory. It's one we most people don't tend to eat enough fish, which is like 2 to 3 portions of fatty fish. This is your salmon, your mackerel, your fish like that, not necessarily like just tuna. What is our other one? Vitamin B12 for the vegetarians and vegans. Yep. That's another big one, because we get that from meat sources. Of course, vegetarian vegans don't eat meat, and that's important for energy metabolism and energy production. So we want to make sure we supplement that.
And that ultimately helps mental clarity as well. Because a lot of people take B12 to sort of reduce the anxiety.
Yeah, I think for most people who eat an omnivorous diet, you're probably all right. But
Okay.
again, it's one of those ones that if you have too much of it, you're just going to pee it out and have expensive pee. So go for it.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does happen.
Yeah.
And then the final one, probiotics, I've been looking into a lot more. It's to do with gut health. The gut and the brain are connected, and they actually see that a unhealthy gut microbiome can lead to negative mental health issues. But that's kind of like, again, health nutrition, but also, you know, to enhance your digestion and be able to absorb all the nutrients in your food. That is what that bacteria does. It helps you digest those foods, and it helps you metabolize the foods so that we can get all the nutrients we can from our food. And those are our health ones. I hope I haven't forgotten one. I'm sure there is another one, but
No, but that's generally what I look at, the performance ones, and then that from the health perspective, it's vitamin D, omega-3, and then sometimes magnesium.
So that is the one I forgot. I've been actually recently, the last 8 to 10 weeks, I've been taking a magnesium 3 and 1, glycinate, citrate, and malate.
Yep.
They all have slightly different ones. Glycinate is more to do with sleep, citrate is more to do with exercise, and I've just felt better. I used to finish my 3 days of jiu-jitsu and I just feel battered. But in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it hasn't happened as much. Again, can I put it down to just that? Unfortunately, maybe, but that's definitely one of the things I've changed in those last 6 to 8 weeks that's helped me make me feel better.
Yeah.
And again, I've been doing a lot of deep diving on the research, especially at the moment. I've started putting content out again, so make sure you follow me, J Nutritionist, shameless plug.
We'll put it all in.
And yeah, it helps muscle soreness, helps muscle recovery. It's an electrolyte as well, so it might help with our hydration. So those are the ones that I really like at the moment.
And it's a pity that we're into the negative here, because we can go on forever.
Yeah.
But let's do the main question of the day. If you had to look at nutrition as a whole, what would you? I know this is difficult, but what would be your main message to the people out there?
What I said before, try and keep it simple. Understand the fundamentals and find the strategy that works for you. Because people, you know, they stress, like we just discussed, and we see social media. Try and find people who are evidence-based. I'm not saying I'm a know-it-all. I'm not saying I'm the person that's always right, or sometimes we get it wrong. But try and follow people who are, I guess, legit. I don't know if that's the right word, or honest, because now in the social media world, there's so many people who talk in absolutes. I think, especially with nutrition, if you talk in absolutes, I'm going to immediately shut down. You know, this thing is bad for you. I'm going to shut down and move on. But try and keep it simple. Try and keep the stress low. And remember that health is not just physical health, mental health. So if you eat that one thing and you feel super giddy and you feel crap about it, that's not good.
And you gave me that one-liner earlier for elite.
Oh, yes. Yes, I almost forgot to mention that one. Again, athletes is all of us. Getting your nutrition right won't make an average athlete elite, but it can
make an elite
make an elite athlete average. Yeah, I ruined it. It was so solid earlier as well. So getting your nutrition right won't make an average athlete elite, but getting it wrong can make an elite athlete average.
Bang.
Got it.